They didn't make it easy, but Norwich City got it over the line at Pride Park. And there's no blurred lines at all about their form, which is 9 points from a possible 12. Welcome to this week's edition of the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast, one that's never accused of being out of touch. And I'll be trying to keep both Paddy, Davitt and Seaman bang in line for this week's episode. I think I've used them all up inside the opening 20 seconds. So that's good. And of course, we are going to talk about the incidents and the dramas and the controversy of Norwich City's 3-2 win over Derby County. But we're also going to talk about the actual football, which I thought was pretty fun. So it's actually a shame that so much of the post-match analysis from my perspective has ended up sort of directed towards decisions and things that weren't given. And look, maybe that's natural. But Paddy, let's start with Norwich City, because for all of the jokes and all of the line jokes that I've made there, it's a big win, isn't it? And for different reasons, maybe to what we were talking about with the dismantling of Watford last weekend, where they won 4-1. This was a very different type of win, but probably just as satisfying.
More so from my perspective, Connor, this feels like the biggest win. Not in numerical. Yes, they didn't put, well, nearly did, but they didn't put 4 goals past an opponent and only concede 1. It wasn't the margin of that made it the best for me. It was just the nature of it, and particularly that before the game. And we'll get into Derby and how strong they've been at home over a period of 2 seasons now, back end of last season, start of this. To the context, straight away, you were thinking if they get anything today, that'll be up there with anything they've achieved already this season under Johannes. But then the manner of how that game played out, the ebb and flow, defensively tested, but also that added attacking element. And again, more confirmation of players very comfortable, understanding their roles, understanding the instructions that Johannes is trying to drill into them, so it becomes intuitive and second nature. You are starting to see that now with every game. And the fact that they backed up last week against Watford at home, went to arguably the toughest ground in the Championship on early season evidence, and prevailed, and the manner they prevailed. I mean, maybe we're in the line of business where we need to get a bit carried away and build them up so that people will accuse us of knocking them down when they go on a 6-game losing streak in the deepest of midwinter. But it's hard to remain grounded when you see these 2 performances back to back, because they were achieved end result the same, i.e. 3 points, but achieved in very different circumstances, albeit there was 1 or 2 parallels as well in terms of adversity and dealing with that. But just in the space of 7 days, many of the things that Johannes picked up on against Watford, they found themselves challenged on those measures again. And this time, I'm thinking in terms of when it went to 1-1, as it did against Watford, they were far more proactive. They went on the front foot, which was what Johannes had asked them to do against Watford. And even then, when Derby got a goal back in stoppage time, and it was a bit of an Alamo job, they withstood that and they were strong. And it's, for me, definitely the best performance, definitely the best result of the season. And we're recording this Sunday morning, and I know this is a pod looking back to events at Derby, but I cannot now wait for Leeds, Farker, Carrow Road Tuesday night, because that, again, not wishing to get carried away, but that almost feels a very early marker in terms of 2 sides who, depending on, maybe the outcome on Tuesday night, it might just reaffirm that one, if not both, are going to be in the promotion shake-up, which is remarkable, really, given, we only have to go back to our pre-season pod, and it was a very much a holding pattern sensation. I think all 3 of us were on the same page in terms of what might be possible this season. And in very, very short order now, that the horizon is looking to be a bit more optimistic, and that might all come crashing down if they get hammered by Farker's mob on Tuesday night at Carrow Road, because that's the nature of it. We do tend to fluctuate with each 90 minutes we've just consumed, but it's more not so much 6 points from these 2 games, it's how they've achieved it, the fundamentals that have allowed them to achieve that, how closely aligned it feels already to what Johannes is trying to do, what he built at Nordsjælland as well in very short order. And as I say, you only feel from here that all those trends, all those real positive trends will accentuate further the more games, the more training time that this group of players, this head coach get together. And if they're producing what they're producing now, with a fair win with injuries, and that's always the caveat, then what position could they be in, say, January, February for me? So really optimistic feeling around that football club. And that was encapsulated at the final whistle. You got 2,800 in itself, a tremendous turnout to get to Derby for that time of the day on a Saturday morning when it's on telly. And those scenes at the final whistle, you know, where players, staff, fans united as one, and pertinent because I've mentioned him already, but very Farker-esque in terms of the high points of the Farker regime. That sense that everybody was pulling in the same direction, they were all united behind the same cause. And again, maybe because I need to not get carried away too much. Maybe it's a bit early, but the parallels are there, and it's great now that, you know, a Farker team will come to Carrow Road on Tuesday, and we'll get another benchmarking opportunity of just what could be unfolding this season under another very young in coaching terms, but clearly a very astute head coach and a group of players who, on the evidence of these 6 or 7 league games, are clearly relishing working with this guy, buying into his methods, and feel almost empowered to go on and, you know, consign maybe the last 2 or 3 seasons of Championship gruel to what's gone before. And in terms of an optimistic, positive mindset, you know, looking forward to what they can achieve with this group, with this head coach, and those set of fans as well. So, yeah, it's a good time, I think, again, to be a Norwich fan. And, you know, that's a place we'd rather be than where we have been too often, maybe in the last 2 or 3 managerial cycles.
Yeah, and I think sort of underpinning all you've spoken about there, and you're right, Leeds is going to be really interesting for a host of reasons, but particularly given the proximity to that playoff disaster, really, and to see how closer, perhaps, or not, those teams are now, and particularly Norwich's maybe approach to that game compared to what it was in the playoffs. But I think underpinning everything that you said there, and it's a very, very positive message. And to be honest, I wish we could just not say any more and stop it there, because that would be a great way to go. We've got so much still to delve into. But Sam, it's this sort of funness, isn't it? And Paddy sort of identified it there. You think about Dean, maybe even the back end of Daniel Farker potentially, but there was still obviously a lot of credit in the bank there. But the Dean Smith reign was very grey. David Wagner's one was pretty grey for large parts of it, with sort of rays of sunshine as well. What you've got so far is, even if Norwich, I think, would have lost 3-2 yesterday, I think Norwich fans would have walked away from that probably feeling like there was something building, but equally that funness is back, that enjoyability, if that's a word, to watch their team again, because of what they're creating on the pitch, because of the way that they're playing. There's a clear structure, there's a clear identity, and even in a difficult away circumstance, we'll come on to that context of Pride Park and how much of a fortress it's been a little bit later on, but that feeling, and it feels like it's, well, and I certainly feel like it's much more enjoyable to watch this iteration of Norwich City than perhaps the last few under the last few head coaches.
Yeah, I agree completely, and it was sort of along the lines of what Thorup promised when he first came into the club. You watched his first few press conferences and his first public engagements as the Norwich City head coach, and it was almost this Kevin Keegan-esque, you know, you score 4, we'll score 5 type mentality, with so much focus on attacking and possession and how Norwich can be proactive and make it about those things rather than pragmatism and a defensive nature, and how you can respond to what the other team does to win games. And yeah, I agree with you, really. When you look at that scoreline, you look at some of the games that have played out this season, they have had real entertainment value. And although I don't think it was the perfect performance from Norwich yesterday, there were certainly plenty of weaknesses that we could pick apart, and it wasn't the same slick team that I think we saw against Watford. Winning 3-2, scoring that number of goals against a team that hadn't conceded at Pride Park this season going into that game, I think it really united fans behind a project once again that feels like it's going in the direction they really want. It feels like Norwich now are about football in possession and trying to be proactive and be attacking and get their more creative, more exciting players on the ball and in the best areas. as much as possible. And I felt Norwich did that a lot yesterday. Maybe there were some defensive concerns, and those were the concerns raised when I spoke to a few fans after the game as well. But overwhelmingly, the feeling you got from those coming out of the away end was, as you said, fun and a big group of people who had enjoyed that. I'm sure everyone who watched it on TV was feeling fairly emotionally exhausted by the end of it as well. And I think that's what most football fans want from watching their team play. Of course, the major bonus is when you win that game. But I think the fact that there is that sense of fun, there is that entertainment, gives an extra dimension to Norwich games that those fans really, really wanted after a couple of years of not really having that.
And I think what we're seeing now from this Norwich team, just to sort of underpin your point, Paddy, about improvement before we delve into decisions and whatnot, is you look at and there's a real consistency now in terms of their underlying performance data, which I think is really encouraging because, and Johannes has spoke about this, if you can get the performances in a certain period, it may not guarantee results every week, but if you can achieve a consistent level of performance, then quite often that does translate into results over the long term. And you look at what Norwich have done really this season, with the exception of Oxford and Coventry, which was a game they won. Coventry as well, by the way. Blackburn, they record basically Blackburn, Sheffield United, Swansea, Watford, and now Derby. They've recorded more expected goals than expected goals against in every game. So basically, they're creating better chances than their opponents consistently. Oxford and Blackburn, they had under 50% possession, but every game since then, including obviously a 4-0 demolition at Selhurst Park, they've had the majority of the ball. We are beginning now to see, I think, what is some real hard work translate into performances, and those performances translating into results. And as I said, that may not be the case every week and on a different day with different decisions and different officials. Maybe we're talking about a draw at Pride Park. But those trends heading in the right direction is positive. I can't remember, maybe Paddy, you can remember the game where I think it was after a defeat or draw. And Johannes said that in October, Norwich City will look significantly better than they did on that particular day. It was one of the early ones. And I think the fact that we're seeing that quite visibly and we're talking about different type of wins and different type of performances is really encouraging. And I don't know if either of you have got a Derby programme to hand, but there was a nice quote that they picked up on from Johannes in there about on the ball City and about how that is, but it's quite nice actually. I haven't really thought of it this way, but how that is basically intrinsic of what he wants to create and what his team wants to be in terms of on the ball and how that's sort of woven into the fabric of the club. It's quite a nice quote actually. I certainly hadn't seen or heard it before, but on that point, Paddy, of improvement, and it backs up what you've said there, we're seeing it game by game by game, not just sort of linear improvement, but just consistent sort of numbers, and they're doing all the right things that do translate into results and should then translate into points.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of that could be a data-led analysis, but what sticks in my mind, and I can't remember which game it was, but he said that in terms, I think it might have been to a question, how closely is what we're seeing now from your team where you want them to be, or how much progression is there in terms of that game model. And he said for him, one of the sort of indicators is you're creating the same types of chances in games. And look at yesterday. Look at those two goals that Sainz scored, 2 and 3. They're very similar. Norwich are turning the ball over. Goal number 1, a turnover in midfield, Marcelino Nunes, and then they play from there. Quick, incisive passing. Even similarities in terms of it's Josh Sargent facing balls across the box for Borja Sainz. Doesn't necessarily have to be those actors fulfilling those roles, but in terms of a constituents. Parts of an overall game plan, you're seeing it. You're seeing that consistency now in terms of chance creation, and then all those other elements that you referenced there in terms of the data backs that up. But you can see it with your own eyes. You don't need to have this, forensic coaching sort of background to see week to week. You're watching a very similar templates, very similar approach, and that clearly, is only going to accentuate now with each passing result, each passing game where they find themselves in different testing situations, and they come through that, because that then reaffirms, if you're a player, the robustness of what this coach is asking me to do. It's effective. It's residually effective. We can go turn it on against a Watford at Carrow Road, where you've got the weight of the fans in the stadium behind you and all those elements. But you can also go to Derby, where that isn't the case, and you're very much in the minority. There's 30,000 there. They're riled up as we get into the analysis of the game by that first goal and the circumstances of it, and you have to deal with that. And that's a different scenario to the one they faced previously. Yet they tried to do the same things, and it paid off because they walk away with 3 more goals and 3 more points. And what I increasingly like about this guy is just, and maybe it's, and we don't want to sort of tar or label all Scandinavians of the same way, but he is so cool. He's so cool under pressure. He's not going to be emotionally carried away by anything. He just how he talked yesterday post match about that period there where he's got them back in at half time and it's all gone off, for want of a better phrase, with that goal and the aftermath and the ferocity that was washing down from the stands, and we experienced a bit of that directly, and we'll get into that in due course. But but he calmly sat them down and said, "Look, almost, we need to play this game differently now. They're going to come out with that intensity. We have to counteract that." And his antidote for that was, we need to do even better at passing the ball, more or less diffusing it by their possession, their control, their calmness. And he went on to say, for that first 15-minute spell culminating their equaliser, they wasn't able to do that. But then he made a change. Slimani came on, and they did. They were able to almost reconnect the first half of that performance in terms of control on the ball with what we saw thereafter from about the hour mark onwards. And he also said as well, which again testifies, I think, to the point that he actually saw in Derby's almost frenzied reaction to that on the pitch opportunities, because he said they will commit bodies forward, they will leave spaces for us, we'll be able to profit if we just get our passing, bang, 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 quick, incisive. And lo and behold, you look at goal 2, you look at goal 3, both because Derby were flooding forward, trying to almost, complete that comeback, fueled by that sense of injustice and grievance. And yet Norwich very clinically, very calmly said, no, we're going to soak that up defensively, and then we're just going to turn that around, and then we're going to punish you. We're going to punish you through the brilliance and the clinicalness of their attacking play on the turnover. So to be able to decode that in quite a febrile atmosphere, again, is just a testament to the coach they've got now, and that he's able to, in game, which was a criticism of maybe his predecessors, maybe even Farker at times, in game, he can decode it, remain true to their fundamentals, tweak it where they need to tweak it, but yet emerge with another victory and another impressive performance. So, yeah, for me, you're right. It feels like that he's getting his messages across now, and in double quick time as well. But I think that's only part of it. I think you also need to overlay that they have a coach who can adapt, and it isn't this kind of painting by numbers. We will do this, and this every game, and come what may. And again, that was a criticism of Farker at times, that they were so wedded to, we have to play one way. Doesn't matter what the opponent are doing. Doesn't matter what they're trying to do. And that at times foundered, let's be honest, particularly when they got to the Premier League. You get the sense with this guy, yes, he has a game model. He has a set of coaching beliefs, a way he wants the game to be played. But there's far more flexibility and flex in that approach. And that, that to me is Shane Duffy. There's a case study, a microcosm. Shane Duffy doesn't feel like a Johannes Thorup type of player in terms of maybe his ability on the ball, and I don't want to do him down on that. But in terms of what his skill set is as a centre-back, doesn't necessarily feel it's a perfect fit. Yet at the moment, he looks like a player who is very comfortable and is, even at his rather advancing years as a football player, is learning new things, is willing to take that on board, and is willing to go in that direction. I mean, it's a lot easier to bring younger players with you who are maybe grateful in one regard because you're giving them opportunity now to play first team football. It's a lot harder to do that with senior pros. And you look at Kenny McLean, another example. He seems to be, and there were some quotes attributed to him in the week, that he feels he's getting better. He feels he's enjoying it. He's enjoying the challenges being posed by this new head coach who's putting new demands on him. And to be able to meld the younger, newer element with the older, again, is another good signal for how this season might unfold from here.
Yeah, I was trying to, when you were speaking there, trying to think about it, and I think cold is the wrong way to describe Johannes Hoff Thorup. I think clinical is better because there is this sort of strategic nature to him, and you know, it's that saying, isn't it? When everyone else around you is losing their heads and you're able to keep yours, etc. And I think that was an illustration yesterday, because at 1-1, I think I turned to you, Pad, and went, you know, they could be gone here because of the way that the injustice was utilised, because of the momentum that Derby had. But then actually they decoded it again, and we probably saw the response to maybe the criticisms that he had last week, that they were a little bit too passive, and to get the second goal when they did was really important, albeit they maybe undid some of that control late on. But he's almost like a chess player, and I wrote a column about this. There's a pragmatism under there. Yes, as you said, there's a game model, there's a way he wants to play, but equally it is tailored to opposition sometimes. We spoke last week about the inverted fullbacks. You've got Jack Stacey, the way they've built up with a back three. There's lots of different ideas sort of tailored for each situation. They've gone to a back three at points. I actually felt it was slightly detrimental to them on Saturday, but that is an option available to them. So we haven't seen this sort of regimented, this is how I play, like it or lump it. We're not going to change. There's not any of that, but there are baseline fundamentals that remain the same, and then bits around that are tweaked. And I think that's pretty impressive, the way that Norwich City are going about their business and the way that he's handled himself as well. And we've spoken about it liberally on this podcast amid what has been some really significant challenges that some head coaches don't have to face during their entire tenure, let alone inside the opening 3 months, with players withdrawing themselves from duty, or handing in transfer requests, and then your first team coach leaving, and your best player getting sold. All of that stuff is really detrimental to then trying to implement a lot of stuff and giving a team a lot of information. So to get them to progress as quickly as they have is a testament to the work that him and his coaching team have done so far. And you don't get the sense that he is somebody who now is going to sit back in his chair and think the work's done. The fact that after this game he came out and was speaking about improvements that they need to make, even around Borja Sainz, who we're going to come on to in a little while, I think probably strikes the heart of that sort of clinical nature that I spoke about. So yeah, of course, could all be derailed from here and they could lose the next 6-4-0. But from where we're at the moment, it's well worth reflecting. I think, yeah, Johannes Hoff Thorup and Ben Napper as well, by the way, for the way this squad has been crafted, deserve a lot of credit so far for the way that it's gelled. But still very much early days, and the Championship's a long season and it has ups and downs, and we know that all too well. Sam, let's on a I say lighter note, but I did fear for your safety at one stage, because for some reason, in amongst all the injustice, and look, I get it, Derby fans were aggrieved, and I think if we were in their situation, and we'll come on to the decision in a moment, then we would be speaking a lot of the same terms. There was anger at obviously the linesman, the referee, the EFL. I'm sure Norwich fans were in that, and seemingly us. So just tell us a little bit about what unfolded. I think it was just about half time, wasn't it, at Pride Park? Paint the scene for us.
Yeah, so it was quite quickly after that first goal, which, as you say, came right on the brink of half time, which probably wasn't ideal timing for the situation. We could have done with some distraction for those attendees in front of us. But yeah, obviously after the first goal, I think everyone was trying to work out whether the ball had crossed the line. I think most of the evidence suggests it probably fairly definitively wasn't on the pitch, despite some of the fairly sarcastic or jokey discussions on social media. I think all of us know there's a good chance that ball was over the line. So we were all sort of showing each other pictures, having a look across socials to see if anyone had said anything about it. And yeah, obviously we had established fairly quickly that the ball looked like it may have gone out of play. And at that point, you've got to have a little smile. I don't think it was necessarily a sort of delightful smile, in terms of
I think it was more disbelief. Can I say?
Yeah,
it's more, how on earth did they miss that?
Yeah, the only things you can do there really is have a little wry smile or sit there with your mouth wide open. And yeah, I didn't think we got accused, or I got accused of laughing. There were some of those fans in front of us were saying, "You're laughing at us, we're upset here and you're laughing at us," type thing. I don't think there was any actual chuckling going on. But there were probably a couple of wry smiles exchanged across the press box, and yeah, as you say, they sort of rounded on us, which was a bit of a surprise. I've got to say, it's the first time I think that's ever happened to me since I started the job. I've seen it happen at Carrow Road, actually, where there have been opposition journalists have been have not got on particularly well with some of the fans when other teams have scored. But yeah, it was the first time that it's happened to me. It was an interesting experience, but thankfully there was enough going on in the second half that we didn't become pantomime villains, and there wasn't too much more of that. Although after the equaliser, I did notice a couple of very gleeful glances back at us, which was a very interesting situation overall. Thankfully, nobody was injured amongst all of it. But I would say not much wrongdoing from us, and more just we were a way for those fans to get their frustrations out, and you can understand, given all the evidence around, and as you said, we'll come on more specifically to the decision. But given all the evidence around, and I think what everyone's seen by now, they probably had the right to be aggrieved. Maybe not with us though. Maybe with the linesman.
Yeah, I did have to remind one female Derby fan that we hadn't made the decision, so it wasn't really anything to do with us. But there we go. And I think it genuinely was like, goodness me, like disbelief just how much it was out. And I mean, let's come on to it then, Paddy. It's a bad one, isn't it? I mean, we can have the conversation about VAR, but for a linesman to be as close as he was with it, and actually I've gone back and watched it a few times, because at the time I was like, well, has he got a couple of bodies in his way, and that's why he's not been able to see it? Has something been impairing his vision? And I genuinely don't think there was. It's a shocker, isn't it, from the linesman?
Well, now you've said that, I haven't actually seen it back. So I've only got the real-time assessment. I thought there might be some sort of looking through players, but i.e. Sargent and the defender, Cashin, was it? But if you're saying,
I think actually, if we're to nitpick, I think he's slightly behind the play, and I think that's probably why he's missed it. He's not. Yeah.
He definitely wasn't keeping up with play. He was. Well, I'm not going to surmise where he was along the touchline, but he wasn't looking straight up the dead ball line, if you want to paint that picture. So anything else would have been guesswork. So in that regard, if he's not sure, then you can't make a decision, can you? Surely. I mean, I don't really want to get down into the nitty gritty of refereeing and what advice they're given or whatever, but that seems to me fairly common sense. If you're, in his case, the assistant, you cannot definitively see that incident. You're not sure if the ball has crossed the line, the whole of the ball, you don't give it. Now, obviously, if he's in the wrong position, then that is clearly an error, and I'm sure that, as always, there's assessors, isn't there? There is a whole structure around the referees and the officials, maybe more so Premier League level, but I'm sure in the Championship, at that level, there will be reports, there will be assessments made of the performances of the officials. Maybe even some commentary from opposing managers goes into that. I can imagine what Paul Warren's checklist will be on that game if he's asked for his opinion on the performance of the officials. But so might just be worth. I don't know if there's such a thing as assistants getting demoted and sort of given with all respect, a National League game or something this coming weekend. But maybe keep an eye on the two officials and see where their next assignment is. That might be a bit of a subliminal message that the powers that be were less than impressed with their performances individually and collectively. But it's a bad one, yeah. There's no doubt about it. And the TV/still pictures, the ones that haven't been doctored by Norwich fans, show quite clearly that ball was well over the line. There was no debate. But the part of that movement beforehand was, Sargent's shot clearly does appear to hit Cashin's hands. So, if this is about getting the right decision / do we need now video technology in the Championship, then you pull that back, it's a penalty, isn't it? So, which is, I seem, the point that a lot of Norwich fans have made, and even we won't move off this quickly, I'm sure, but even the Jack Stacey one later on, which leads to the third goal, if I'm right in saying, there was a significant passage of play prior to, from that point to actually Sainz putting the ball in the net. So that doesn't wash for me either. Plus, Johannes himself, who was very good on the whole topic about trying to assist the referees, made I think a fairly valid point that the player in front of Angus Gunn for their second goal in stoppage time is that in a VAR world allowed to stand? Probably not. That's probably offside. So yes, you stack all that up, then Norwich have fallen the right side of it, and that isn't always the case, and that's where the frustration, if you're a Derby fan in this instance, or Paul Warne or those players, completely understandable. You get it, because if the boot was on the other foot, Norwich would feel a huge burning sense of injustice, but you also need to zoom out a touch, and for me, it isn't Norwich won that game because a ball that was clearly over the goal line was allowed to be rolled on, and it led to a goal. That isn't why Norwich won that game. There were other incidents of a contentious nature involving the officials. Some went for Norwich, some didn't, and as Paul Warne himself said, to be fair, now it's just popped into my head in his post-match. It's the old cliche, but these even themselves out. I'm not sure that is the case, but that is the old cliche. So he was looking forward to quote them evening themselves out, and Derby now falling the right side of that ledger. And if they do, I'm pretty sure those fans in and around us won't be asking for those goals to be chalked off. That's just the nature of the beast. And if we want to move it on to a VAR debate, you either get VAR involved or you don't, and there'll be good elements of VAR, and that might have alleviated a lot of the talking points yesterday. But equally, look at its application in the Premier League. It is not the cure for all evil, when it comes to football and improving the product. So let's, Norwich and themselves know all about VAR in the Premier League, and it wasn't an enjoyable experience most weeks. So I'm not sure that is the answer in its current guise. But if we start down that path, then we'll still be talking here at midnight tonight. So maybe we don't need to make this a big old VAR discussion. But for me, yeah, right to be aggrieved if you're anything to do with Derby, but equally, I don't think that one decision dictated the outcome of yesterday's game.
No, I agree. I agree with that analysis, and I think you're right. In a VAR world, if you're going through that first goal, you start with the very first incident, which is a clear handball from Cashin that takes the ball out of play in the first place. So even though yes, it was out of play and that element would have been stripped back, I think Norwich probably get awarded a penalty. So that's kind of maybe the vicious irony for Derby fans to an extent. But yeah, it's difficult not to look at the pictures and just be staggered really as to how on earth that goal came to be in that form. I think on VAR more broadly, and you're right, I don't want to make this a major debate, but maybe I'm still scarred by the Teemu Pukki against Tottenham one, which I'm still adamant was not offside. But I actually think in a way it's kind of a USP now for the Championship not to have it. And it's makes games more enjoyable. It makes games more authentic. I think the drama of yesterday is that in its same form if we have VAR. I'm not quite sure. I did think it was very good of Johannes Hoff Thorup to basically say that he would want it after decisions have gone his way. I think that's very noble of him, and that's clearly what he believes. I would maybe gently suggest he's maybe used to a more refined and probably not too familiar with Denmark's VAR, but surely it can't be worse than the one that we've got over here, which seems to be implemented most weeks in the Premier League. So yeah, it's a difficult debate, but I think for the Championship and the product of the Championship, it's better almost without it. I think if you polled the vast majority of fans, they would definitely say so. And that means over the course of the season, and we'll have it at points here as well. We had it last season with obviously the Borja Sainz red card at Middlesbrough, which wasn't. You just have to take it. It's just the game. It's just the way that it is. And sometimes they go for you, and sometimes they go against you, and that's what makes the game so magnificent at points when you have those sort of emotions. And actually what VAR hasn't done is removed any of the controversy, because people still talk about decisions every week in the Premier League anyway, so I'm not really sure it solves anything. But let's go to the third goal, Sam, because there's a little bit of controversy over this as well. The ball, I've seen differing, so I've seen it from two angles. One that makes it look like the ball is out of play, and one that makes it look like it isn't. What I would say about this one is I think it's a hell of a lot closer, and B, for the linesman, it is on the opposite side to where he is. The first one's on the near touch line. The second one is way past the other goal line. And as Paddy referenced, there is a spell in the build up to that third goal where Derby actually win the ball back. So we're not talking about it as being like the first goal directly leading to a goal.
No, and I think that's the element that's been lost quite a lot in the dissection of the refereeing performance and the game yesterday, was that actually in the ground when it was happening, the outrage over the fact that Derby had missed out on a corner was very short-lived, because immediately they had the ball back. I think fairly quickly they were back in the Norwich half, probably within 4 or 5 seconds. And yeah, it didn't feel like that really impacted things much. I also agree with your point on the ball and the fact that it's not quite as clear that was out. We've seen incidents before where everyone's seen this one angle and it's hammered home that this ball was out, and then suddenly another one emerges and you can see
Well,
quite.
it was Arsenal Newcastle, wasn't it, in the Premier League? And it just has to overhang the line. It can be all the way out, but as long as it overhangs the line, then it's technically still in.
Yeah, that's good memory actually. Was it Anthony Gordon? I knew there was a Premier League example, but I'd completely forgotten which one it was. And yeah, you're right, that has happened before where you can see from certain different angles very different views of the ball, and you can see different evidence. So yeah, I wouldn't be 100% sure that ball was out. I also don't really think it impacted the game much. It's basically either Derby have a corner and they have to wait 30 seconds for their corner taker to go over there and chuck the ball in the box, or they have the ball on the halfway line and they have to wait 10 seconds to get the ball back in the box. So yeah, I don't think it made that much difference, and I can understand after perhaps the injustice of the first goal that there was this perception around the referees. There was certainly an atmosphere that you tend to get after those sorts of decisions of trying to contest everything for the rest of the game, but ultimately I don't think that really impacted things much. And given the length of time between that Stacey clearance and the Sainz goal, I mean, I was saying to you off camera, you could go back to the second minute and say, oh, there might have been this foul that didn't get given or was given. And if that was a free kick where it wasn't, then that would have completely changed the complex of the game, and everything would have been different thereafter. You know, you can't go back and re-referee every tiny decision. Derby had the opportunity to get the ball forward again. They lost it, and Norwich ended up scoring. So where I definitely do have sympathy over that first goal, I don't think you can really factor that in much for the third, to be honest.
Yeah, there we go. That's the end of referee corner. Hopefully we don't have to revisit this too often, because it's not my favourite topic to make games about referees, particularly when the game was as pulsating and as dramatic and as brilliant as it was yesterday. I think even Paul Warne said as much in his post game. If you paid to go to that game, I think you got your entertainment's worth, whether you're on the right side of the result or not. Let's get back to football then. I can't believe we are 37 minutes into this show and we've not spoken about Borja Sainz yet. So let's immediately put that right. Hat-trick for him. And let's begin with some numbers, Paddy. It's the first Norwich City hat-trick since Teemu Pukki's in a 7-0 win over Huddersfield in April 2021, which was 1,271 days ago. And it's the first away from home in the league since James Maddison in a 4-3 defeat to Hull in March 2018, which I think also had some very dodgy refereeing decisions from memory. And that was 2,394 days ago. There have been 2 hat-tricks in the Cup since that point, away from home. Can either of you boys remember when those came? There was one in the League Cup and one in the FA Cup. I'd maybe suggest one is a little bit more well-known than the other.
Mr. Reader.
I mean, this one, yeah.
Ida, yep. So there's also one in the League Cup. I wouldn't have got this, I don't think.
What year?
2018.
2018. Jordan Rhodes.
Bang on, Mr. Davitt. Well done. Yeah, against Wickham.
Wickham, yeah. Green kit. Lime green kit.
I think that was the when he came out the line. It don't matter, that one. I think it was the night that was born. But yeah, anyway, those numbers illustrate how difficult it is to do and how long it's been since a Norwich player did it. He's a real agent of chaos, Borja Sainz. I think that's fair to say. But yeah, what an afternoon for that young man.
What a season it's turning into already. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that's 6 goals in 7 league games.
Only Josh Maja has more in the entire championship.
And as Mr. Harvey pointed out at the final whistle, he's matched his entire league goal tally from last season already, and that is, and we're still in September, so that is the rate of progress. And thrown in there, I mean, we're talking 6 from 7. He could have had about 4 at Swansea as well, which is only 3. It was only 3 games ago. He could have had another 2 yesterday doing the ratings last night. I mean, he had the Nunes corner that dropped to him, and he's right-footed, just the other side of the post. He's kind of cut across it, and then there was that lob as well, which probably didn't quite mean it like that, but the keeper's tipped it over. So it's not inconceivable he walks off the pitch with 5 goals to his name. But yeah, I mean, it just put me in mind of everything Johannes said after that Swansea game, all joking aside, that where he plays on the pitch, he will miss chances. That is the nature of it if you're an attacking-minded player. But you just need to control your emotions, not get carried away. I think the sense was from Norwich's coaching staff, going back to that Swansea game, don't want to dwell on it, but in the game, he got too caught up in maybe a little bit of criticism from the away end, and he didn't retain his focus. Well, what a testament to him that in the 2 games since, that brilliant finish and take initially against Watford, and then what I like about the goals on Saturday for Derby was, 2 of the 3. It's like a striker's instinct, to get himself across the near post for the first goal, irrespective of what we've just discussed about that ball was over the line. But there's a lot of wingers wouldn't have that innate instinct that something's going to happen here. I need to be at the near post. I need to get across my marker. And then just very understated, but the quality of that finish, it was Zola-esque against Norwich. If you remember that brilliant back-heeled flick at Stamford Bridge in FA Cup from yesteryear. Just, again, instinctive, the execution of it, but actually the thought process that, almost, I don't think you can coach that. You can't coach that in a wide player. That you can tell them till you're blue in the face if you're a coach that you need to be in certain positions in the penalty area. But again, the third goal, he keeps himself onside just about, and he's there up in full support because he's desperate to score goals. You can see that. Everything about his demeanour is he wants to get on the under things. He's not somebody who maybe gets his kicks necessarily as a wide player from creating, and that element of his craft he probably does need to work on a little bit. But what you cannot dispute now is that in the post Zara, post John Rowe world, who's going to step up and take a bit of the burden off Josh Sargent? It's Borja Sainz. And I just hope now that he's got that platform, he's got those goals in his tank, his confidence must be sky high now. Just keep listening to that head coach and Glenn and the other people around him. Keep doing the things he's doing. Keep yourself fit and healthy, and he's going to be up. He's going to be up in Sarah territory for me in terms of goal contributions this season, because he clearly is a player at this level who will score goals because he has that ability, that desire, that hunger that he wants to get himself into positions in the penalty area. He's not hanging out on the opposite flank and he's on his heels. There was one in the first half where, lovely move. I think Dore was involved. Nunes, might have been McLean. The ball works its way from Cernach to Kellen Fisher on the overlap, puts a ball to the back post. Who's there trying to, like Alan Shearer-esque, get on the end of it? It's Borja Sainz. That isn't, for me, your archetypal wing play. It's probably doing him a disservice to actually label him a winger now. He's more, for me, of an attacker. He's just... he's almost a pseudo striker in his mannerisms and his thought processes, and you can see now why Thorup, particularly post Swansea, there's so much excitement because he sees the raw material there. That if you can meld it, and he continues to want to learn and have that desire to improve. What is he? 23 years of age, just started his second season in England. There was that obviously linked to Athletic, his first club in Spain in the summer past. He goes on this trajectory for the rest of this season. Sadly, from a Norwich perspective, we know who is going to be the absolute saleable asset next summer, and it's going to be Borja Sainz. And it'll be interesting the calibre of club, much like Zara and a club of stature of Galatasaray in European circles. I think if he continues on this path, given his age profile, then the sky is the limit. And it'd be great if that is the case, and we get to next summer. And okay, it wouldn't be great maybe if we have a saga involving Borja Sainz in his future, but if we do, then that means that he's gone from 6 goals in 7 to double figures in goals, maybe double figures in assists. And you would hope if he's weighed into that level and you have a fit and healthy Josh Sargent can replicate anything near what he did last season, then Norwich themselves collectively have had a very, very good season. What that looks like, time will tell. But yeah, no, he must absolutely relish playing football at the moment in a Norwich shirt, because in this team he's going to get chances. And if he's going to get chances, then he has the ability, and he's showing it now in these last 2 games, to score goals and score a lot of goals as well. And it's really exciting now to see him and Sargent particularly, what that can spark. Again, I'm not trying to draw a parallel at this stage, but Buendia and Pukki with the spearhead and the poster boys for those 2 championship winning title seasons under Farker. Could Sargent and Sainz emerge to do something similar? Who knows?
Yeah, it was nice to speak to Borja Sainz yesterday. It's I think the first time since he's joined the club that he's done any post-game media, because obviously he's had to learn English and whatnot. And even before we started, I think he basically apologised for his English, but it was actually very good. And he dedicated his hat-trick to his family, to his girlfriend. He was very thankful for Josh Sargent, obviously, in the role that he played. And we'll come on to that in a moment. But what Paddy said there, Sam, is right. And it's a trade-off with him, isn't it? I mean, I've got some stats in front of me now, and I don't really like pass completion as a stat. I'll say that because I think it's, particularly for attacking players, it's a nonsense, because you need to put it in context of where the passes are made and what they're trying to do. And look, he's had basically what my point is, he's had the lowest pass completion rate of any Norwich City starter yesterday, which was 69.2. If you go to like miscontrols and dispossessed, he's right at the top of that list as well. But I think what I'm trying to say is that's illustrative of a player that is willing to take risks and isn't a player who cares necessarily about ball retention. It's all about ball progression and opportunity creation, and as Paddy referenced, goal creation, even if that comes at the frustration. And this probably links all the way back to a conversation we had on the last podcast, which you don't want to reopen. We might have assisted him, is what I'll add on this journey to hat-trick. But it gets to the nub of it, doesn't it? I think even Thorup spoke about it post-game, that you have got, and I'll go back to the word I used, just an agent of chaos there, somebody who is brilliant in terms of the goals that he produces, but also, as Paddy referenced, there's still so much to extract from him. And actually, I thought halfway through Paddy's answer he was about to sell him to Barcelona, but I think he just about refrained from that. But yeah, this trade-off that you have with him, because there's clearly those elements where he does lose the ball, and by and large he loses the ball in okay areas. I think there are times where he does try stupid flicks on the edge of his own penalty area, but by and large he tries things in the right areas. But if the trade-off of that means that you get the brilliance of what we saw yesterday, from my perspective, so be it.
Yeah, it's interesting you raise actually the discussion as to whether we've helped him out with that hat-trick, because it feels like recently he's crafted the perfect narrative to get featured on the PinkUn podcast for as long as possible. He had the struggles at Swansea, then a bit of a mixed performance with a goal against Watford, and now he's gone and got a hat-trick. I don't know if he's just going to keep massaging things so that he manages to get his own 10-minute section every week. But yeah, I think the sort of agent of chaos role is one that you need in that Johannes Hoff Thorup system, because so much of it is about controlled possession and about team moves and planning movements, which, you know, by no means is a bad thing. And I think it's what Norwich fans by and large wanted to see. And it's obviously got Thorup success so far. But when there is that level of predictability and pattern at times, you need someone in there who can be a bit of a different option and gives you something slightly different. Ono Hernandez actually is someone we've spoken a lot about in the last few weeks, and I thought he played that role quite well in the Daniel Farker system, where a lot of it was those possession-based players who maybe didn't have that direct physical running element, and he offered that in that team that went and won the championship in 2019. And although Sainz might be doing it maybe slightly better than he did even then, it feels like he's got that similar role where his instinct is giving Norwich a lot in the final third, and he doesn't seem to have that fear, as you said, of losing the ball, of being dispossessed, of trying something and having it not come off. And that's all well and good when it's going perfectly for someone, and when the first 4 passes you play in the game are brilliant ones and it easily comes off. But when you make mistakes, then the challenge is to retain that mentality and to still try things. And I think that's what you get from Sainz. And sometimes it can be irritating, like it was at Swansea, and like you felt fans picked up on, was the fact that he would try 5 things in a row and they wouldn't come off. And then the 6th time, you were just really hoping he would play the simple pass, but he still didn't do that. And when it doesn't come off, that can be a weakness. But in games like yesterday, it's a real strength, because he has that fortitude to not worry about what's gone before. And eventually, when it pays off, usually it results in a goal for Norwich. And obviously we saw that 3 times yesterday. But he's an absolute match winner. Those are the players who it's sometimes hard to sign and hard to predict, because the data, as you suggested, with the sort of pass completion stat and some of the struggles that it might be portrayed he had, looking at that underlying data, it's hard to then find those players in maybe the current recruitment model. So he's the sort of player that I think is getting more and more rare in today's game, and the sort of player that's probably hardest to recruit when you've got the sort of setup that Norwich have. So they'll be very pleased that they've got him. And I think the main positive from that, as Paddy raised, was the fact that Gabriel Sara, Jonathan Rowe both leave the building this summer. Norwich lose more than 25 goals from last season, and you're looking around seeing who can step up. And without Josh Sargent scoring 45 goals, you've got to have somebody there who can really take things to the next level. And it looks like Sainz has done that, and he's definitely given himself a head start in terms of those numbers. So that's really encouraging. Now you want to see the likes of probably Ante Cianats, a couple of the midfielders getting forward and contributing to those numbers a little bit more. But right now, as far as replacing some of the quality they've lost at the top end of the pitch, it looks like he's really taken the mantle and really stepped up. Still on mute, Connor.
There we go. That's a rookie error. Sorry, my bad. It's a bit like sitting down to watch a ballet and then like a bull charges in, and you're sort of sat there again. Was that a bull? And sometimes it's brilliant, but sometimes it's just chaotic and madness. But it seems to be working. So hey ho, or maybe a classical music and suddenly there's an electric guitar drop in. Maybe that's a better analogy to utilize. At this point, I just think it's important to reference Angus Gunn as well, because we're rapidly running out of time and I don't think we're going to be able to touch upon him, but he made an excellent save, as he did as well. It's worth noting against Watford in that period where Norwich were really under pressure, but this one was late on, and yeah, just an excellent reflex save, almost really, to beat away an effort from Caden Jackson, who I'm sure with his Ipswich Town affinities would have loved to score against Norwich City, but alas, I don't know how many games he's played against Norwich now, but I don't think he's been successful in any of them, which is not great for him. And I'm sure he would have loved to have played that role if it would have came up. So that was good. And Johannes Hoff Thorup pushed him in front of the weight, and I think which was a pretty clear indication of how much he thought of that particular save. And it was probably, as much as we talk about a Borja Sainz hat-trick, it was as much of a match-winning moment as that hat-trick was. Paddy, what I did want to speak about was Josh Sargent, because as Sam said there, he isn't probably getting the goals return that maybe we're used to seeing with Josh Sargent. And I wouldn't say he's cutting a frustrated figure, because he's not. He's contributing in a very different way. But actually, I think what epitomised him, yes, was obviously the 2 assists in Borja Sainz's hat-trick, and the pass for the third one is wonderful, by the way, outside the boot, to get the weight on that and to put it basically far enough away from the keeper just to tempt him out slightly, but not into a position where he can claim the ball is brilliant. But for me, it's the second one, where is his decoy run, his tireless running, that creates the space for Sainz to basically maneuver a shot from, and it's just expert centre forward play. But we could talk about a host of players in that team, but yeah, it's Josh Sargent might not be getting the rewards in terms of goals, but in terms of contribution, he's just as important as ever for Norwich City.
Oh, he's absolutely intrinsic. I mean, you say decoy run. I've seen it from behind the goal, one of the camera angles. I think he's pretty unhappy, and if that ball doesn't hit the back of the net, Borja Sainz is getting told. There's no doubt about it. I think he wanted that slid through, but it did have that impact. Yeah, if you're the defender, I don't know who the defender was, might have been Cashin, but maybe you backed off to a degree because you're worried about that ball down the channel for Sargent, as they did for the first goal, of course, and that afforded Sainz the little window of opportunity to then execute a very clinical finish. But yeah, no, I mean, you're right, the goals haven't come, and he's had 2 very similar both games, both Watford game and Derby, that at the back post, balls getting cut across. If you remember, very early on against Watford, Backman has flew across, tremendously agile stop. Probably injured himself in the process, Watford keeper. And then was it first half, wasn't it? Yeah, there was the ball that Sainz played. It went through the legs of the defender. And that Cashin, who I thought was excellent, he looks a really good player, Derby Irish centre-back. I could see clubs maybe higher up the food chain looking at him. I mean, he has been linked with Norwich in the past. But he just managed to divert it. And his eyes, if you're Sargent, just behind him, your eyes are lighting up at the back post in the 6-yard box. So I'm sure the striker's part of him is getting a bit annoyed that he's gone 2 games now in a team who have scored 7 goals and he's not got one of those. So that part of him, I'm sure, will be a little bit frustrated. I'm sure in a very friendly, competitive way, he's not too keen to see Sainz leading the goal charts because, number 9s as a rule, they have that in their character that they want to be the main goal scoring threat in any team, and he won't want to defer to Borja Sainz, I'm sure, in the goal count. But that just underlines again the selflessness. And Thorup himself was very quick in the dissection of Sainz and how good he was. Didn't need to be prompted that 2 of those goals he can thank Josh Sargent for. Particularly the third one, because he could have checked back in onto his right and had a shot there, in the position he was. But as you mapped out, Connor, the better option was the one he executed brilliantly to entice the keeper out just enough to allow Borja Sainz to slot it underneath his body. And I guess if you're Josh Sargent, he's got enough experience to know now that much like last season, that particularly now in this team, and he must be thinking, I've got to keep myself fit, because if I can stay at the head of the attack in this team, which is set up to attack and keep on attacking, and you get that evolution in terms of the midfield. Sam touched on it. Sainz has stepped forward, but if you start to get Slimani, even McLean, even Nunes, because they have the technical ability, not to mention Cernach and 1 or 2 others as well, Schwartau, if you can get them really dialed in terms of Norwich's play in the final third, then the chief beneficiary will be Josh Sargent. I mean, what did he finish on? Albeit a heavily injury interrupted season. Was it about 16 league goals last season?
I will have a look.
It was about that 15, 16. I will make a prediction now, and I'll be pretty sure it won't fall down, that if he stays fit and he plays the vast majority of the games, he will top that in this team. Even though he's gone 2 games now where he'll be a little bit frustrated from a personal goal tally. He is and I think, was it Thursday when you went? Friday when you went to speak to him pre-match. There was a section on Sargent, wasn't there? I get my presses mixed up because there's so many of them now. And he talked about Thorup, how important he is, but not actually about goal threat and goal scoring. More in terms of the first line of the press and defensively and the structure and how he's almost the coordinating focal point for the press, and just generally his athleticism, his desire to do that. And we've seen a lot of games. We didn't see it so much yesterday, but Watford was an example where he's, there's a counter and it's Josh Sargent herring back 40, 50 yards into his own defensive half to halt that counter. That appetite for selflessness, really, in terms of doing what the team need, is why he is the all-round package. And yeah, there's no doubt. You're going to tell me now, Connor, but whatever tally he ended up on last season, he's going to top that. Yeah, he will top 16 goals. I mean, what's he on already? He's got 2, is he? Yeah. So I've jinxed him now. He'll probably, that ankle issue will return and he'll be out for 4 months. So sorry about that, Josh. But if he stays fit and stays healthy, I just do not see, in a team that is designed as it is under this manager, this head coach, why he isn't, easily getting past 16 league goals this season.
Well, the one point I would make on him is that, yes, there were 16 goals last season, but there were only 2 assists. He's already surpassed that this year, 3, all for Borja Sainz, which shows, I think, a little bit of their blossoming relationship. And Sainz has all of Norwich City's away goals this season, which is a nice little quirk as well. I think we're all but out of time to really delve into that Leeds game, unfortunately, but I think Paddy did touch upon that a little bit earlier. So what I'm going to do instead is basically get you boys to make some predictions, because they're always fun. I might join you as well. But obviously, we've spoken in glowing terms about this Norwich City team, about what they've done over the last few weeks. 9 points from a possible 12. Now, before we head into yet another international break, woohoo! We've got obviously 2 home games, Leeds United and Hull City. 6 points on the table. How many are Norwich City getting from those 2? Samuel Seaman.
This is the problem with when the Championship starts getting regular with the Tuesday games. Every PinkUn podcast is going to end with us making unsuccessful points predictions.
And that's why we do it. Give the people what they want.
Yeah, that's what they want. Inaccurate representations of the future. No, I think based on a mix of the optimism that there is around at the moment, the heights that we've seen Norwich hit in the last few weeks, but also the strength of Leeds and the quality that they've got, I'll say 4 points. 1 against Leeds and then 3 against Hull.
Nice. Okay, I'll jump in before we go to Paddy. I think 3 as a minimum would be good. I think anything over that would be excellent. Pad?
Yeah, I would have said 4. And the nature of football and the nature of the Championship, I wouldn't be surprised if we get to this point next Sunday and it was beat Leeds and draw with Hull, because that's the madcap. That's the madcap world we inhabit now in the Championship. So 4 out of 6, I think, which for me, given Leeds is one of those fixtures, really does off the back of 6 from 6 in these last 2. You're now really getting that momentum, and unfortunately, then is Hull the one last game before the actual? Yeah, well, that wouldn't be ideal, would it, to have to park it for 2 weeks if they've took, work out my maths, 11 points from the last 4 games. But such is the vagaries of the international fixture calendar.
Yeah, we've got to pause so England can play. I don't even know who they're playing. I'll have a look.
Greece, I think. Is it Greece?
Yeah,
or is it... Yeah.
England can play Greece and Finland, so that's well worthy of pausing in the Nations League, isn't it? Everyone's really licking their lips over that, but that's a different pod entirely. Look, we could have kept going, I think, for another hour. We haven't even spoken about. I know we touched upon Shane Duffy. We've not spoken about Jose Cordoba. We haven't spoken about Callum Fisher. There's so many within. I think that performance on Saturday that we could have spoke about. Sadly, referee's corner took up a little too much of the pod for our liking, but we will pause it there. We will of course be at Carrow Road for both of the games this week. Daniel Farke's reunion with Leeds on Tuesday night, and Abu Kamara's reunion with Hull City on Saturday. I'm sure you'll all give him a lovely reception. But that seems like an apt place to leave it. Paddy, Sam, thank you very much. Thank you all very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you again very soon.